for me, that was like, yeah, I need that in my life. Come serve me.
You just stuck your tongue out. You know that, right?
I know.
Yo,
No,
so with this fly up in here, man, we gotta keep it rolling. Like, this is good stuff. Okay, so my name is Konata.
What's up? I'm Amanda.
And you are watching Our Small World
Podcast.
There we go.
What's
Good
up?
job. Good job, baby
Good
girl.
job, baby.
Hey.
Take 17 and a half.
Yes. What we talking about? Yo, what we talking about?
What we talking about?
We talking about?
What you talking about?
We talking about?
What you talking about?
You know what I'm saying? So we talking about a little bit of ministry today, you know, a little bit of spirituality today.
So let me tell you something about my husband.
Boy. What we talking about? What we talking about?
So when I first met my husband, so I'm taking us down a different way. When I first met my husband, I had just moved to Florida. A really good friend of ours had introduced me to him. He passed away.
Yes.
Several years ago, but he introduced me to Konata, and I was just coming out of this crazy situation. And so I remember meeting Konata, and I thought he was a great guy, but, you know, I was just coming out of this space. So I wasn't looking for anybody, you know. And as time had gone on, like, I remember, you know, I was becoming part of the church and just getting used to this new life of what this looked like to be in church culture and with church people that really loved the Lord. And it was just, you know, it was awesome to see people my age that were really engaged in things of the Lord. And I say this all the time. And the other day it dawned on me that I've been using the wrong word. It was not that I was not attracted to you. Because I've been saying this, I wasn't attracted to him.
You know what I'm saying?
It's not that I wasn't attracted.
Let's stop right there. Let's sit there for a moment. I've had to listen to this story about her looking at me, seeing me, and she thought like I was freaking blending into the walls.
Well,
like, you know,
you
like
weren't blending into the wall. You're just blending into people.
Oh, that's different. That's different.
But it wasn't that I wasn't attracted. I wasn't interested is the word. I wasn't interested in you, right? So therefore, I wasn't attracted because I wasn't looking. I wasn't checking for you. But it wasn't that I was. So my apologies that I've said the wrong word for the past 800 years.
Yes.
But I wasn't interested in anybody at the time. And so I remember as, you know, time had been going on and, you know, I'm living this new life, getting to know Konata and his friends and just the people we were with. And I remember I was sitting in service and we weren't sitting next to each other. And I remember I looked over. He was quite a few ways from me. And I remember I just looked over and I saw him worshiping. And it was the first time I looked at him and I was like, ooh.
Yeah, man.
Who's that?
The light was just shining.
And I saw him in a different light. Because in my relationships prior, you know, they were all based on attraction of like, oh, he looks good or whatever. And I was able to see Konata in a different space. I saw him not with the heart of worship. And I was like, man, okay. What are we talking about though? And then I just continued to just watch him in the way he was with his friends and the way you with your friends. I watched you with your mom, just all of that. I used to watch you in ministry when you would do ministry with the, you know, with the youth and stuff. And I remember thinking to myself, man, like that is the type of person that I would like in my life. Because I had never experienced that type of man. And so who you were to people, you were not different in different places. Like the Konata I saw at church was the same Konata I saw with your family. It was the same Konata that I saw with your friends. And you were always willing to help and serve. And I thought for me, that was like, yeah, I need that in my life. Come serve me.
You just stuck your tongue out. You know that, right?
I know. No, but yeah, I just wanted to share that because I thought that was dope. And so the reason why I shared that is because I was able to see you in a different space that, you know, I think sometimes when people are looking for relationships, they're looking in the wrong spaces. And for me, I was able to see the heart of you as a person that loved the Lord. And for me, that mattered. And so I understood that if you could be that person, that whatever life looked like with you would look great. And us doing ministry together has been amazing.
Mm-hmm. And I remember, when we first, you know, um, met each other, it's before we were married, and so on and so forth. Um, yeah, I was always interested in being a part of something, bigger than myself.
Mm.
So when I got plugged into the church and the culture and those kinds of things, we had an awesome, outlet through our youth group.
Yeah.
And being there and just going from a youth that was just attending, didn't really give, Jesus the time of day like that until I was like 17 years old, graduating high school. But those years that I actually decided, hey, this is what I'm really feeling. I want to I want to give this thing a shot for real. That is when it became really evident to me that even though I was just going just to sit in a seat, and just to have fun, it was just a place where there was young people and we was playing ping pong and hanging out. There was a basketball league attached to it. There were so many things in the youth group to just attract you, just as anybody could have went. We was going to malls, heat games. This flies tripping. We was going to heat games. We was just doing things again with your peers that just made it attractive. And I think that's the beauty of youth groups. If you're in the right one.
Yeah.
So in this particular youth group, it just made sense to me to go from being a part of it to actually doing the same thing other people had done in me. So I never discount the idea of planting a seed, which Jesus talked about. You plant a seed, and like anything, it takes time. We have a garden in the backyard that my beautiful wife has cultivated and started with. What we got back there? We got some tomatoes, some peppers,
some carrots,
some basil, you know what I'm saying? We used to have mint back there, some cilantro. You know what I'm saying? Like the way I said that. You know what I'm saying?
You got the rolling in the R.
Dominican over here. But we see that, it takes time. The soil has to be prepared a certain way. Then the seed has to be planted a certain way. And some of the plants have to be pollinated together, So you need these different things, but it takes a few different steps. And that's what I appreciate the most about the idea of ministry, and what people, speaking of all people of all people, Ray King was one of the guys that just this concept that he had about this. He had a song called One Night Stand. And the idea of it was that when Jesus loves a person, or when he decides to come into your life, Jesus comes with no expectations. He's going to love you. And then whether you decide to pursue him after that, because he's continually doing it, is not his agenda. His agenda is just to show you love. And he hopes the response to that love is that you will accept him and allow him into your life, so on and so forth. Yeah. And I remember just as a kid, even in New York, when the seed was planted at that park, when I was 12 years old, and then, it just stayed in my heart, even though I was still cussing, still thinking sex before marriage was no big deal, thinking, everything that I thought, getting money, whatever, still was in my heart. But that seed had been planted there, and it just needed the right people to water it. It got me to that point where when I was 17 years old, I was finally ready to say, all right, I'd already, just graduated high school, and I was ready, like, all right, I've been hearing this name so much. I see it's been doing all these things in people's lives, but I never really gave it a real shot. So let me go ahead and do it. And when I came to that realization, it it wasn't even like a afterthought. It just made sense to be able to pour into other people's lives that are coming up, and to do it in the same way, to try to not judge people, to try to allow people to kind of make their way to making their own decision. Because at the end of the day, you have to make that decision, to follow after God wholeheartedly, to get into full-time ministry, to whatever it is that you're, is tied into your purpose. You have to make that decision. So it's been wonderful, and when we got married, I believe I think you were already part of the youth staff, kind of helping out somewhat. So. You were traveling a lot, as was I, so we couldn't be as committed as normal. But by the time we came back, and we were foundationally here in the States and not traveling all over the country and all over the world, when we were here, we decided, okay, let's go ahead and do this. And we became a significant part of our youth group. We started a hip hop life group, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of things were birthed out of that, you know, a lot of artists, a lot of people, Marty Marr from Social Club.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that's key what you're saying, because we opened up with what's ministry, right? And we were joking, but I think sometimes when people think of ministry, that it's inside the four walls of a church.
Yeah.
Right. Whenever we say ministry, you're like, oh, you're a pastor, or you're this or that. And ministry is your life. It's how you live your life. It's based on your purpose. It's what you know that God has called you specifically to do.
Yeah.
Right. So my ministry is going to look different in different seasons, but it's still based on who I'm called to reach. And so, sometimes we had a season that we worked in the church. We're still connected with our church, but our ministry, the way we do ministry, just looks different. And so I think for a long time, I know for me, I struggled with it because I felt like, what we were called didn't look like what everyone else around us looked like. And everyone else was called to do this. And then we was like, man, we just don't look like that. We don't live like that. We don't believe we're called to that. And I remember struggling because I was like, well, where do I fit into this box? And I had to learn I wasn't meant to fit in that box. That box is not even a part of what I'm called to do. And so I think when the beautiful part of it was that everything that we did birthed something new. And then it birthed something else new, and then birthed something else new. And now where we're here, that we're able to see products of us doing ministry in different places, that when we do see people succeeding and they're living out their purpose, it's like, my fingerprint is on that. Not really because it's my fingerprint, but the Lord allowed me to touch their lives, and now they're living out their purpose. And that, I think when we started finally understanding that part of it, I believe is when our ministry for us felt like it began to thrive, because we didn't feel stuck, or at least for me, I didn't feel stuck in this, what other people were making me feel like ministry looked like.
Yeah.
And the beautiful part of it is that I still was able to serve within my local church. I think sometimes it's easy for us to try to dismiss the importance of serving in our local church, and it's so vital. It was so key for when we were doing, music, and we were traveling the world doing music, that when we came home, it was so important for us to actually be connected with our local church and to be able to just serve and not come in and be like, oh, you guys are celebrities. No, I don't care about any of that. I just what chairs do you need me to move? What tables do you need me to move? Who do we need to take out for coffee? And I think that was, freeing for me to understand that ministry wasn't this one thing. It wasn't this one location. It was the way I lived my life, and what choices I was making to make sure that I was impacting people's lives for the kingdom.
And it's, and this is no shot at other artists or at all. Everyone does their ministry, their craft, their work, job differently. And for us, it was like you said, just like when you met me. And as far as when I met you, one of the things that you had told me when you worked at Carnival Cruise Lines, one of the things that was, I guess, celebrated about you is that you didn't change who you were. Like when you were talking, like when you would just talk, you would use almost the same slang, not quite, but you would use the same passions. You didn't change your voice or none of that stuff. And I remember one time you said one of your coworkers asked you why you talk like that and said you need to be more corporate with your language. And then you had a meeting immediately after that where you tried to do what this bozo told you to do. And you got called out by the person that hired you. Yeah. By the person that hired you to do exactly what he had in mind because of these things. And he said, why do you sound like that? He didn't get it. And you told him what happened. He said, that guy's a bozo. Do what you do because that's why I hired you. Yeah. And that's what we need here at this company. And I think it's the same way in ministry. We were big proponents of this when we were doing Rhema Soul, right? Every time we got on the mic and we was talking to a crowd of people, we always talked about being unique, being your own person, using the gifts that God has given you. And I love the story of David. Like, it's one of my favorites among many others, but it's not because of this, the slaying of the giants, or the giant. It's not because he was this great war hero. It's because before he was any of those things, he always had it in his heart, but he got lost in the talents and the gifts that God had given him. And he used those things to get to his purpose. And I always say, like, David was a worshiper. He's in Psalms worshiping. He got called in by King Saul because of his ability to play the harp. And he won favor by doing that he was now noticed. And then you fast forward, and then he's in this war, and he's a name that is still there because he was able to already get in front of the king. Why? By using his talent. So we always told people, let what you do bleed out. Like, if God is involved in your life, then make sure it bleeds through what you're doing. And I just happen to be, wearing some things. And one of the reasons why I like, sneaker culture and all this stuff is that the sneakers that are the dopest are the ones that have a story. Just like anything in my closet, there are just certain sneakers I have that I've had for a long time. There's just a story behind them.
Yeah.
This guy that made these jeans is from Bacalar Collection. I'm forgetting his name, but he's a pastor. The sneakers I have on right now are Amar Munir Jordan 3s. The reason why I bought them is because it's a guy who made these sneakers based on his mom being a single parent mom and the things that she instilled in his life. But everyone's trying to tell a story, and that's what I get out of it. And the story that we told, or the story that we tell through our lives, that is ministry. Why? The most significant thing in our story is God.
Yeah.
He's the most significant, most important thing that has happened in my life. He's the biggest milestone, so on and so forth. So I have to speak about him.
Yeah.
He's the reason why my life changed. He's the reason why I went from living where I was living as a child to now living here, to having these experiences, to being in a healthy marriage, coming from a background that doesn't involve any of that. So we always kind of resonated, or should I say gravitated to that idea of telling your story through your things, through your crafts, through your abilities, and we've been around phenomenal people who do that. We got Soundwave or Angel Acevedo, God, what is it? God is a designer.
Yeah.
Like, just people that we know that are always pushing
the limit.
Yeah. Because there are no limits. Whether you like fashion, whether you like whatever, you can use it all to glorify God.
Yeah.
And that's what has been so wonderful about our trek, because we realized that at a very early age. And I think some of the traveling that we did helped with that. Some of the fact that we kind of was just different all the time helped with that as well. But there are a lot of people that they had to go through, trying to fit their, circle shape in a square peg for a long time, and getting frustrated with whatever type of ministry they were doing, and trying to wear the suit, and trying to, be a pastor, try to sign up for someone's deacon board or whatever it is, and knew that that's not really what they were built for, but that's what they were told.
Yeah. I think it always goes back to authenticity, right? Like, if you be who you are, then you will come out. I think, of course, we come from the music industry, and so there's always this constant debate of, am I a Christian artist? Am I this? And it's just like the conversation is so done. I'm so over the conversation. There's this constant debate of, well, you wouldn't say you're a Christian plumber. No, but I'm gonna say I'm a Christian. Like, you know what I mean? And
absolutely.
And I think, I have these conversations with our team and just people who come through the studio, because they constantly want to know my opinion. I don't really think my opinion matters that much. I just think how you live your life will just bleed out. If you really authentically have a relationship with God, if the Lord that you say you serve is the foundation and the center of the core of your life, it will bleed out.
Yeah.
What you speak of in your music, it will be there. How you live your life, it will be there. How you love people, it will be there.
Yeah.
So before you can even open your mouth to say, I am anything, people should be coming to you and say, hey, are you a Christian?
Yeah.
I used to love when people would come to us when we would be at bars performing and stuff. And the first thing they would come and say, yo, you guys are Christians. I loved it
Yeah.
because it was never anything that we had to say. It was that who we were, who we served, bled out.
Yeah.
And I think, when it comes to that, when you're your authentic self, right? When you're in a dry season of your spirituality, it shows.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're in a season that your relationship with the Lord is not your priority, it shows.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't been part of a local church, if you have not spent time with God, it shows. Why? Because the choices you make, the way you speak, how you speak to people, all of that shows. And so I think if we can keep an authentic self, right? Shout out to our friends who started a church called Authentic Church in Orlando.
What up? What up?
I love the heartbeat of and the vision of it's keeping it real. Just be who you are. Their tagline is "For God so loved," right? And that's all that matters. Is that God loved us enough that he gave his son. And so if we can keep that authenticity of who we are in Christ, it should always bleed out of who you are. And so that's what ministry should look like. That if I know I have a heart for young people, I want to be where young people are at. If I'm called to women ministry, then I need to go be where the women are at. If I'm called to prison ministry, guess what? I need to be part of the prison board. I need to go be, and I think, I think we need to start learning how to think out the box and trusting who God is saying that we are, and trusting what God is saying. Hey, this is what I've called you to do in this season. And sometimes that season, and this is tough because we all go through it, but sometimes that season is not going to feel fun. And it's going to feel like, well, no, I want to be preaching in front of 10,000, but you haven't said anything to the 10 people I've assigned to you in this season.
That's good.
So if you haven't spoken anything to those 10 people, and I can't trust you with those 10, why would I trust you with 10,000? And I think, that's understanding that, like, kind of what you said before, like when we started with youth ministry, we had this thing called a hip hop small group. And it started, I think, with like 5 people. And I think it ended with like 20 something. And a majority of those kids in that group had no idea about hip hop. They could care less about music, but they loved us and they loved the authenticity that came from us. And because of that, I remember going through a season after they all went to college, and all of them, I remember all of them, I think it was 1 or maybe 2 stayed serving the Lord. And I remember feeling like, man, we suck. Like, oh my God, we failed.
You didn't handle that well.
I didn't handle it well at all. I didn't want to do ministry anymore. I just was like, you know what? I'm good. Like, I've invested time. These kids are trash. They don't love Jesus. And I had to learn, this ain't about you, Amanda. That was pride. It had nothing to do with you or Konata. Like, we did what we were supposed to do. We planted the seed, and it was their choice. Were they going to take the seed and let it grow? And out of all those kids, I think it was 1 or 2 that stayed serving the Lord. And I remember I was brokenhearted for years. And
at the time,
that's
what it looked like.
That's what it looked like. And then
fast forward to now,
and then I started, then life started happening. And, as they started going through their journeys, they would call us with their stuff. And I started realizing, oh, this is a lifelong journey. This isn't just a moment of now 5 years later, I'm having to go pick up one of them at 2:00 in the morning because they've gotten themselves into trouble. And I was like, oh, this is ministry. It's 3:00 in the morning and someone knocked on our door and they need to sleep on our couch. And so understanding that it's a journey for them, and now fast forward where they're at now, a majority of them are living out their purpose and they're serving the Lord. And there's still a few that are, still acting like a bunch of whatever. But, I'm believing that, they will wake up and encounter the Lord. But I just talked a lot. But go ahead, baby.
And right? Because you had a season where you fell away from the Lord, or, as a child, getting your teenage late years and then going into college. But during that time, even though you knew, and we talk about this with Kevin Hockenberry, shout out to Authentic Church again, even when you knew that you was not supposed to be somewhere, or you supposed to be doing something, or you at the edge of hell, about to do something that your life could end, you knew about God. And the first thing you did when trouble arose was, God help me. You know what I'm saying? And so the foundation was there. And I think that's the beauty of the gospel. That's the beauty, when Jesus in the latter part of Matthew, when he says, go out into the world and preach the gospel, like he's telling us what to do. He said, be a witness to what I've done, what has happened in your life. But there's nowhere that he says, go get people saved. It never
Just
happens,
be a
right?
light. Yeah.
Go bring them salvation. No, he did that.
Yeah.
All we're supposed to do is tell them about how dope it was when we got it.
Yeah.
And hey, I think it's a good idea for you to do because you're a little,
And
turned up right
I think
now.
when we begin to take the credit, we're actually it's probably a sin because that's got to be prideful.
Yeah.
And we're thinking that it's about us. And man, that sermon I preached was dope. Like 17 people got saved.
Mm-hmm.
No, because you could just say, God can use you to say 2 things and the world can change.
Yo, we was in Puerto Rico one time.
Oh, snap.
We was on this mission trip.
I remember that.
I'm glad I don't remember this person's name, but they brought in this speaker. This guy was all over the worst communicator I've ever heard in my life. He was talking all over the place, like just bringing stories in, blah, 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 blah. But when he was done and it was time for the altar call and he was calling people up to get saved, I remember people was getting saved. And I was like, man, if that scripture jumped out, God will use the foolish things of this earth, to shame the wise. And just watching that God can use anyone. It gave me courage, it encouraged me because I thought I had to be, this perfect person. I still think that's a mentality that we need to stay away from or be very careful of. And this is why we get so let down when people that we rank so high on the spiritual speedometer or whatever, when they fail, slow down, stop, or something happens, and we're like, oh man, how did that happen to them? They were perfect. They never was perfect. They were regular people like you and me who understood who God is and made a mistake. Their mistake is just public. Yours may be private. So, when we understood all this stuff, and it's stuff that we learn more and more every day, when you're with a coworker and you don't know why they're cursing as much as they are, but you're with them. I remember I went to lunch with this guy and finally got to the heart of why it's so hard for him to kind of accept that God is there, because that was his biggest thing. Where's God at? He's a Jewish dude. I believe his grandmother lived in a 4-foot basement in Germany, hiding from the Nazis for 4 or 8 years. So she never stood up tall for the first 8 years of her life. You know what I'm saying? So that kind of stuff will make you challenge some things about what you believe. And then on top of that, he had so many miscarriages, trying to have kids. He has 3 boys now. But I remember that conversation because he got teary-eyed in my car. And that's when ministry happens. Because then I could say, hey, I know what you're going through. I don't fully understand what it is to lose that, children and so on and so forth. But that is why I serve God, because God can give me joy in the midst of my worst heartache. And then I could tell him about things that is where ministry happens. At least it happens all over the place. But that's one of the places where we forget, because we, again, want it to happen in these pockets. You invite someone to church. Maybe they get saved, maybe they don't. Or like you said, you want to preach to 10,000 people, but you have 5 people around you that are pouring their hearts out to you, and you won't say boo about God or the significance he has in your life and the significance he wishes to have in their lives. And it opened up a door, in my life with this particular coworker and all my coworkers. They know who I am. They know what I do. And that's what it has to be. It has to bleed in everything. I mean, I literally have had board meetings, corporate meetings, where I'm killing it on the sales floor, had more sales or deals than anybody else in the whole company. And people ask me, yo, so what is your secret? And of course you're tempted to be like, oh man, like I'm mad smooth on the phone. I got the rebuttal game down, you know what I'm saying? But that's not the truth for me. So the truth for me is, well, I just pray, I literally make an effort to pray with my family before I leave the door. And I come out here and I try to do the best job I can. And that answer usually gets prompted with, well, what else are you doing? Is there anything else? Whatever, because that can't be it. That can't be it. No, that is it. I'm not that good. God is good. You know what I'm saying? And I think we've always, even at times when, we maybe because we're human, right? We may have strayed away. I know we had some shows where we killed it, and maybe you spoke, and girls was just melting, or I spoke, and dudes was like, "Yo, God is good," and you feel good about those. Like, man, God, you know what I'm saying? I kind of brought that David story home today, Lord. You know what I'm saying? I kind of made that real relevant for these boys out here. But in those same instances, you can go up and you can figure out formulas to fake the funk.
Yeah.
And again, God is so good that he'll still move in that.
I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and we were talking about how, sometimes we can you can get so used to doing stuff that, you move from moving in this from the supernatural, like tapping into allowing the Lord to use you, to now you're moving in your own, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you look back and like, man, that was all me. That's horrible. Like, when we were talking about how, man, God is merciful, that he still allows things to happen. He's like, man, you function so out of sight of me right now, but because I love them, I'm still gonna allow this, but I'm gonna deal with you, And so I think we take advantage of the grace sometimes. You said something earlier, about how sometimes we get so surprised when people that we revere, right? People that we look up to, and when something comes out publicly and everyone's just in shock. And so I think one thing is that we got to stop putting people on pedestals. We're all broken humans that God loves and says, I'm going to still choose you in all your foolishness, right?
Yeah.
It's all throughout scripture. But I think too, a lot of times that happens because privately, right? They've allowed a season of dryness to happen. And we've dealt with that, right?
Oh yeah.
Because I don't want people to think that we're like these perfectly on fire for the Lord. Like we've had some dry seasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
How would you say we've handled that? I know I had a very rough season in 2016. I think it was 2016, 2017, where that was a tough one, where I was in a season of almost like questioning my faith, and do I really believe in this stuff? And the people that the Lord had positioned around me, I was starting to fight with them because I just needed someone to sit in my mess with me. How would you say that we have, as a couple, walk through those tough seasons, because we both have had them?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about yours first, I remember that season. There was a lot of disappointment that went with that season, and you were reacting as humanly as you knew how. I mean, you were disappointed. So out of disappointment comes doubt. Certain fears. Expectations drop at a high level. So now you're like, oh, maybe this stuff isn't what it's supposed to be, But the beauty of our relationship was, during that time, I was still doing ministry. I was still pursuing the Lord.
Remember,
during
I had
that
checked
time.
out. I was
and
like,
you had checked
I'm
out.
done with all of it.
And the challenge for most couples is because when you're close, like I think we've always been close, not nearly as close as we've been this last 3 years. And when I say close, I mean in sync, just moving on the same pace.
Is that in sync?
Yeah, that is in sync. Nice. But we was just moving together. So when we would get to those particular places, a lot of times couples think, well, maybe I should bow out too, so I can help her.
Ooh, and that was my expectation
or
too.
Or can
remember?
help him. And I remember you was like, why are you doing this? Like, I need you to, like, why are you continuing in youth ministry? Why are you on the youth staff? I already bowed out. Like, you're going by yourself. Like, what's happening? And I just knew that I wasn't supposed to. And we didn't get into heated arguments about it or anything, but you just had an expectation that eventually I was going to stop. But it would have been the wrong time to stop because I needed to be plugged in. I needed to be pouring in. I needed to do those things so I could bring back with me, and even my time alone with the Lord, so I could bring back an element of God still working in my life. Because the disappointment that you felt was disappointment I was feeling as well. It was different though, because it was a very personal thing as far as how you got this goal and this thing that you wanted to achieve. But either way, I was a part of it. Why? Because we were
Mm-hmm.
married, and it was something that was going to affect us and our whole family. But needless to say, keeping my eye on the prize, knowing that, again, God has been good.
Yeah.
And what I do, anytime I feel disappointment, anytime I feel dry or any of those things, one of the other reasons why I love David's stories is his resume bring up. Like, his resume situation was crazy, you know, when Saul's like, what are you going to do? You're a little runty dude. What are you going to do? This is a giant. Everybody else is scared. Well, he said, well, check out the resume, dog. I've done this already. This dude is a giant, but he ain't got nothing on these lions and bears that I've been slaying on a regular, you know. So this is just another person, and he's opposing the name of Jesus, which I got a problem with. So all those things is the same thing that I do. Like, I do an inventory. God, this can't be that bad. Like, God, like, and then he remember, you're right. Konata, it isn't that bad. Don't forget how good I've been to you. Don't forget this. Don't forget this. Don't forget, like, when it's about health stuff. Don't forget when you got diagnosed, you had hepatitis.
Yeah.
And for 3 months, your parents or your mom separated your dishes, only to go to the doctor 3 months later and him tell you that there's no reason why you should have even had to come here to this specialist. Like, don't forget those things. Don't forget when you moved from New York to Florida and your mom didn't have no means and I still provided for you guys. Don't forget that time you prayed that you would have some money to pay for your car note and you walked out to the thing and got a check from the government for a Pell Grant that paid half of your that half of it paid your car note. Like, all these things. And those are very simple, minimalistic things compared to the things God has done. But doing that helps bring you back to be like, oh man, there's a lot more I got to be grateful for.
Yeah.
And the fact that I'm alive and still breathing is in and of itself a blessing, right? So those are the things that I try to hold on to, and at the same time try to hold on to so that you can continue to see the joy. Because if both of us are depressed, then no one's there to pull the other one up. You know, and I've been there as well.
Yeah.
You know, where you had to help me.
Yeah.
You know, I was messed up in our marriage. Or, you know, I was got caught up in pornography and just feeling pity for myself and moping around, and you were pursuing the Lord, continuing to go after him. And by you doing that and seeing you, because what I would see was exchanges that you would have with people. And I would just see so much joy in your conversation with them and the kids. And even when you addressed me, there was no animosity. You still spoke to me in a certain, with respect and so on and so forth. And I would be like, man, there's something happening here, you know, that I need to tap into. So then that would in turn make me say, okay, well, let me read this word again. Let me get let me get some worship going again. Let me get back to a place where I can hear from the Lord.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't always like this. And I'm not dumb enough to believe that this is how it's gonna stay. This has to be a season that'll pass, because I've had way more good than I've had bad in my life.
Yeah. That's good. I think, you know, what you said is so good. Going back and remembering who God was in the past, and remembering that I love my kids. You guys can probably hear them. They're in the background. It's okay. It makes this normal.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, remembering who God was, right? That the same God that was then is the same God that is still here in the dry season. And when we cross over the dry season and get into whatever season is next, that it'll be the same God. And I think, you know, always keeping that in mind is like, you know, it's tough when you're in it because it's your flesh, it's you, and you're like, woe is me, but everyone has gone through it, right? And I think sometimes we almost beat ourselves up when we go through these seasons.
Yeah.
But it's all throughout scripture, right? Like, one of my favorite, especially in this season I'm in right now with Elijah, you know, he called down fire from heaven. and the Lord released fire from heaven. Like, Elijah was on his own on this mountaintop, and he prayed down fire to prove that God is the only God, right? And after he does this amazing moment of ministry, as we call it, right? Jezebel goes to threaten him and he gets scared and he runs away and he goes into his cave and he gets depressed, and all of a sudden he's like, man, just kill me now. Like he's telling the Lord to take him. So he went from this mountaintop experience to this valley within moments, right? And so I think we have to remember that, like, as people, that the things that we're going to experience, they're that's just part of the process. I think it's how we handle it is how we walk through it, right? How intentional are we being? Are we okay if we are in a moment of a valley experience? Do we just sit in it and just be like, okay, well, I'm just gonna be here and this place sucks? Well, no, like this is when you need to seek after the Lord. And I remember coming out of my season, God was so intentional in that season with people that he had put around me. You were so pivotal in that, because you didn't release, even though I wanted you to come and join me in my mess. Like I appreciated that you didn't. You still served, you still, and I think I had to go through that alone. I think I had to wrestle with the Lord with these things. And I remember a friend of mine, we were in the car one day and having a conversation, and I'm kind of walking them through how I'm processing everything, and I remember telling them, I just feel like I'm so far away to now go back. It just the journey back just seems so far. I don't know if I have the energy to do it. Right. And that's really how it felt. It felt like, man, I've gone so far now. It's just like, and then too, I was carrying this shame of, I'm a core leader. How did I let this happen? Like I'm on stages. I was on stages and performing. And like the beauty of God's grace is that he allowed me to go through that season privately. Like it was never public. We weren't, I think we weren't traveling at the time.
No.
So allowed for me to go through this journey privately. Cause God forbid I was on stage. Who would have known what I would have said on a microphone? And so I remember in the car that day, my friend said, it doesn't matter how far you are. It's a choice. Like you make the choice and you decide if you're going to make the journey or not. Like I can't do that for you. So-and-so can't do that for you. Like that's your choice. Like you have to choose if you're going to come back or not. And you'd be surprised that what you feel is so long, it's really one step. And I was just like, yeah, whatever. Like she always says stuff like that, and I remember walking out of her car thinking like, she's right. This is going to be, it's going to be a step that I have to take. And it's a choice. And, choosing to be intentional, what does that look like? I'm not going to be, when you're in a dry season, it's just tough, right? What's the word? Not contentment. What's the other word? Complacent, right? You get complacent. You're like, whatever, apathetic, and choosing to get out of that. That's hard. But I think if you learn how to trust the people that God has placed around you, they'll be able to speak life into you. I remember, I think we were going on vacation. I think we were on vacation. And I remember we were talking about, just the seasons we were all in. And remember you had mentioned that you were kind of in this, like, it wasn't really like a dry season, but you were kind of just in this like, whatever season. And one, I thought it was good that you were transparent about the season you were in. And two, because we were with friends that we trusted. And so I think that helps with the accountability piece. Two, as a wife, it helped me to hear your heart. Because as a wife, my job is to be your helpmate. And I think sometimes, we get this idea of being a helpmate is that, our job is to cook and clean and blah, blah, blah. And we can do that too. But my role as your helpmate is that if my husband is weak, then I got to be strong for him. What does that look like? Okay, I'm going to have to intercede on his behalf. I got to pray for him. I got to bring him before the throne. And, Lord, you see where my husband is at. And even in your dry season, me not trying to take your position and lead. Right? Because I remember that being tough for me, because I'm like, I'm trying to go, and my husband feels like dead weight, and I had to stop and say, no, I gotta sit back and with him and wait until he gets healthy. And so I'm glad that we went through that season, because it helped me to pray for you differently. But I think too, for you, what you said, you saw that I was still able to find joy in the midst of it. And, just learning how to, even in dry seasons, I think you have a line in one of your songs that you say, what is it? Even with my eyes closed, like I see you better when my eyes are
Yeah,
closed or
yeah.
something, right?
Hmm.
I think that's the truth, is that when we stop and just be still,
Yeah.
because I think it's in those dry seasons we feel like God isn't speaking, but he's
Hmm.
always speaking. It's just we're not really paying attention,
Hmm. Hmm.
and if we learn how to just be still for a moment,
Yeah.
and just say, okay, God, what is it that you're trying to show me in this season, right?
Mm.
It's whether you haven't been faithful, you stop talking to me, you stop reading the Bible, you don't even listen to worship music anymore, you
Yeah.
stop spending time with your family. Like, if you ask him, he'll reveal it. The problem
Hmm.
is we don't really want to hear it.
No.
Like, God, show me. He's like, you sure? But I was sharing with someone the other day about because they were asking me, how, what do you do when God isn't speaking? You can't hear his voice. And I said, God is usually always speaking. If there's a silence, there's a reason. And I was sharing with her about Lazarus, right? When
Mm.
Lazarus died, and they came looking for Jesus, and like, you got to come back. Lazarus died. And if you look at scripture, Lazarus, I mean, God, Jesus was chilling. Like, he didn't get up and be like, oh my, I gotta go.
Right.
Like, he chilled an extra 2 days. Like, he just chilled for 2 days. And so, sometimes God will do that. Sometimes he'll just be silent. And I think it's several things. I think he wants to see, well, how much do you trust me? Right.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think there's an intimacy part to it.
Yep.
That if you're close to someone, right? Whether it's you, or if I'm sitting with my best friend, and we'll never got to say nothing to each other. Like, I love those moments. Like, I can be at my best friend's house and she's reading and I'm probably working on something,
Hmm.
and we'll never have to really talk. Or you and I can sit and be doing, and we're not really talking. There's something about being able to be in the presence of someone and not a word is spoken, but
Hmm.
right? That's how God is. And
Yeah.
sometimes God is like, just know. Like, just know,
Be
and
still and know
just
that
be
I am
still
God.
and know that I'm God. I mean, in that context, he's talking about war and I got this, I'm gonna kill
Yeah.
everybody off. But it's still the same thing. Like,
Oh yeah.
be still, know. And that's what he was telling, Mary and Martha, like, just, it's cool, I got it,
Mhm.
And I think it's really just learning how to just trust God. And I think God is wanting to see, well, do you really trust me? Because we can say it, but are we saying it with our heart? Do you really believe that you trust
Yeah.
me? Because I've heard what your desires, I've heard what you're saying, that he's dead.
Mhm.
In Jesus' mind, he's not, I got him. But do you trust me that I got him?
Mhm.
And I'm gonna sit for 2 days, I'm gonna chill and finish up, and so I think that's what it is. Like, when we're struggling to hear the voice of God, is that sometimes silence is a blessing.
Mhm.
It's that we don't learn how to turn off the other voices that are in our minds.
Yeah.
And sometimes we got to turn off the voices of other people that are around us.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way the Maverick City, that newer song they have. It doesn't mean be still and not
It matters
do
what you do
anything.
when you wait.
Yeah, well, it does. It matters what
Yeah.
you do. It matters your mindset. It matters how you're waiting, how you're being still. It's almost like when you do, I always think of exercise terms. Like when you do a plank, right? It's supposed to be a great core workout. But the key to the plank is the form got to be perfect, and you got to be still and hold that position for as long as you can. And that's what gets the burn going. But the minute you ease up on how it is that you're positioning yourself, you don't get the same value out of the exercise. So the results that you're looking for, you're not going to get as good of a result as you should. And it's the same thing with being still in the Lord. Of course, there's a time where you just need to relax and just literally just relax. But there's another time where you need to be still in the Lord. It doesn't mean stop, but it means wait with anticipation. Praise while you're waiting. Know that God is God. Know that victory is on the other side of that thing. And all this stuff is stuff that most people, for the most part, know. But to live it out is a different situation,
I think sometimes people are like, but how, right? Like, what's the practical, right? I shared something the other day with a group of women I was working with. In this season that I've been walking through, and we've been talking about this, I'm in a waiting season that I didn't even know I was in. Like, I was like, well, what am I waiting for, right?
Yeah.
And as the Lord has been revealing certain things to me, what I see and what the Lord is revealing does not make any sense. Like, it doesn't make sense at all. It's so opposite. And I'm just like, huh, okay. And in this season, as things are progressing, I'm like, yeah, this don't make no sense. I gotta, and the Lord practically has had to tell me, go back and look at what I said. I've had to go back and, because I've, whenever the Lord begins to reveal stuff to me, and whatever it is, if it's a conversation, something I read, or in my prayer time, I'll write it down. And so practically in this, he's had to remind me over and over, go back and look at what I said.
Yeah.
And I've had to go back and say, okay, that was the day I went for a drive. What did he say? And go back, oh, he said this. And I'm like, but that doesn't make sense to what this looks like. And so sometimes when we're in those seasons, it's not going to make sense. But God is like, but just remember what I said, because what I said is not for right now. It's for what's coming. But if you don't do what you're supposed to do right now, you're going to hinder what's coming, right? And I think practically is that, like, what is it that the Lord said? What is it that the Lord promised? What was it that you prayed? Write it down and go back and say, okay, what was it that God said? Because it's easy for us to get in our minds and be like, nah, I know that's what he said, but maybe I thought that to myself, or maybe this, or maybe that. And then people start to come around and be like, well, Amanda, I don't know. Like, you said this, but I don't see it. And be like, yeah, me neither. And before you know it, like, you've got this mumble. But no, sometimes we just got to practically go back and what was it that God said? And then even going back into scripture, there's so many promises in there. Like, what were the promises that God said in scripture? Like, speak those things over your life and understand that if this is what God said then that's what it is.
Yeah.
If he said it, then believe it.
Yay.
Yep.
When we talk about, spirituality, obviously we talked about being in a dry season.
Yeah.
And all these things. How has your, what does that even mean? Spirituality. What does that mean to you? Like, when someone says, how's your spirituality? Or what do you think of?
I always feel like it's used out of context.
Okay.
When someone asks me about my spirituality, it's usually, someone who's kind of into everything. I think it's really just what my walk looks like with the Lord. Yeah.
That's how you're spending your time.
How is my
with the Lord.
Yeah? What is your time with the Lord look like? And I think we all they look different in every season. I think I have seasons where I'm just locked in my room and I'm digging in. I call it my feasting season. Whenever I'm in that season, I know, because there's something that's coming that I need that for. There's other seasons where I feel like, oh, I'm good. Not that I'm coasting, but it's the season of execution for me, that whatever I was locked in my room doing, it's now execution season. Then I have seasons that it's just a season of worship, right? Just praising God for everything that I have or don't have. And so I think when someone asks me about my spirituality, they're like, I believe in Jesus. Okay. But I think for me is, what is your faith? What is your walk with the Lord? What does your relationship with the Lord look like? Yeah. What is God speaking to you in this season?
That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it is for me, what you just said, that last part. What is God speaking to you? How is he speaking to you? How are you allowing yourself to hear him? And for me, it's different. I could be having a very spiritually in-tuned moment with God while listening to a certain type of music. Like I can have a spiritually in-tuned moment with God. It's happened to me several times while watching a movie. Someone says something. It has nothing to do with, any Christian film or anything like that. But because something is said and I hear it, I remember even something as simple as cursing. Like when I was dealing with cursing, it wasn't anything that and I've told you this before, it wasn't anything that any pastor said or anything that anyone said to me that made me stop, because I used to curse like crazy when I was in high school and pretty much until that 17-year-old, benchmark. But the thing that helped me get over that, when I said, you know what, I don't really want to do this, of all things, I was watching a Spike Lee movie, Malcolm X. And Red, before he was named Malcolm X, is walking through the prison yard with this Muslim guy, and he's cursing, and the guy says to him, you know, why'd he curse? He said, oh man, it's just talking a little jive. He said,
Little jive.
a little jive. And he says, what's the big deal? He says, and he said this, and it just blew me away. He said, a man curses when he does not have the words to say what's on his mind. And hey, that may not resonate with anyone else that heard that, but it resonated with me because I wanted to be someone that sounded intelligent. I wanted to be someone, that could speak, that people would listen to just in normal life. It's nothing to do with communicating the gospel or anything. I just wanted that for myself. I wanted to be able to say the things that I'm thinking without resonating or resorting, I should say, to a curse word. And I had this conversation with our kids the other day about, cursing.
What? They cursing?
No, they ain't cursing.
Slap them,
but we was talking about cursing, and I told them, I said, being somebody that raps, I also believe in what's called poetic justice, and I might get flogged for this. But there are certain times when an emotion is there that you curse, right? And I don't think that particular time is what we're talking about. I'm talking about habitual cursing.
Yeah.
A woman delivering a baby naturally, going through the pain of that. The most spiritual women I've heard from their husbands that they let out some crazy words. Exactly. And that's an emotion attached to that. That's like, that has nothing to do with ignorance or anything. That's like screaming out, ow. You know what I'm saying? So in those regard, we got to give people passes on that with pain and all these other kinds of things, depression, loss, so on and so forth. But again, because I'm digressing, that was one of the things where God used that movie to communicate to me that I need to, figure out how to lock down this muscle in my mouth that
I think
creates life and death.
We limit God and how he speaks, right? And so it's funny you said, I was just looking at my phone because I wrote something down that the other day we were watching a movie, and this season, has been beating me up. And the guy said in the movie, he said, take all the bruises, but stay in the ring. And I remember when he said it, I was like, oh. And I just knew that was for me because of the season, because it was a day that I was just feeling like, I don't know if this is worth it. I don't know if I want to go through this anymore.
Yeah.
And to hear that coming from a movie, we're just spending time together, and he said, take all the bruises, but stay in the ring. You know what movie that was?
No.
In the Heights.
Oh, for real?
Nice.
And
so, I honestly believe, I believe that, God is always revealing himself to us. I think it's just, are you making yourself available to hear him? Yeah. Lewis, our friend Lewis, said something really dope. One time we were out to eat, and he said, we've been Christians for so long now. He's like, we've been taught that we're supposed to get people saved and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, and I'm just not there anymore. Like I'm in a space where it's people's choices, right? My job is to just see if they're available and are they willing to know who God is. And he said he was having a conversation with someone, and he said, I don't hear God. Like, he said, do you want to hear God? And the guy was like, well, yeah. He says, well, if you want to hear God, you'll hear God. Like, you just need to ask God, but you need to be available for it. You can't say you want to hear him, but then you're like, you're doubting it because then you're not going to hear him. And I thought that was so key, because that's really what it is, right? Like,
absolutely.
That's what scripture says. Like, if we believe, it's really that easy. Like, if we say that we believe and we confess, like, that's it. That's the bare minimum. And we make this thing so much harder.
Yeah.
The beauty of it is that once you do believe, once you do make that choice, once you make that decision to start living this out, the beauty of who God is begins to show up in your life. And therefore, it begins to cause transformation in your heart. And the person that you once were now become, that's why it says we become a new creation, because, who we used to be now you've experienced something new. It's like, I want to experience this new person.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of who God is, that the love that he has for us and the relationship as it grows, it just causes you to be better, right? It's like even in our marriage, you know, there's things that being married to you has challenged me to become a better woman, right? Except for working out. I haven't gotten there yet. I'm getting there. But there's just certain things that challenge me that, man, I want to be better for him, right? Remember when we first met, like I was just, you know, I was mean and I was just so blunt. And like now I've learned what grace looks like. I've learned what patience look like. I've learned how to not always have something to say. And you know, that stuff. I remember one time you said you're so critical, and I was like, what does that mean? And I started understanding, man, critical is not nice. Like that you're constantly criticizing. And I learned that usually people who are critical is because they're dealing with an insecurity. So I had to do internal, well, what are you so insecure about? And then I was like, oh, okay. And once I was able to deal with that, it changed my whole perspective on things. And so I think that's the beauty of our relationship with the Lord. I think that's why I love marriage. It parallels our relationship with God. It should, I should say. So, yeah.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
I like what you said about, you know, when you're, it's like, that's such a good analogy. What you said, what Lewis said, you know, you want to hear from the Lord, you'll figure it out. You'll and don't get me wrong,
make yourself available.
Sometimes hearing from the Lord is him not saying anything, just wanting you to continue to pursue. But in those moments where he's trying to talk to you and you're saying you want to hear from him and he's trying to get your attention, and I suffer from this sometimes, you know, you're tired, especially if you're working and you're fatigued and then you're doing other things and you know, you got a lot going on. When you finally get a moment to yourself, you want it for yourself. So you want to watch TV, you want to do whatever, you know, when it says in the word that you find rest in him. The other day I had a good night's sleep, right? I woke up at 6:30, ready to go to the gym. And I figured out why it was such a good night's sleep. I think I told you it's because we were sitting there talking. And we were talking about God before I went to sleep, you know? And then the other night I was watching the Miles Monroe thing and I fell asleep watching that instead of watching, you know, normal stuff. Not to say I'm not going to watch TV anymore because, you know what I'm saying, there's some shows, you know what I'm saying, but you know, that analogy, and I used to say this all the time when I used to speak to these kids at the Rock, this ministry I used to deal with. And one of the analogies I used to always use is like, if you're at a show or if you're at a concert or a club or whatever, and you're trying to get someone's attention, you may get their attention, but if they're across the room from you and the music is blasting and it's going crazy and you start talking to them from across the room, they're not going to hear you because the music is blasting. But if they come over, it doesn't matter how loud that music is, if they come over and they can get close enough to your ear, they don't even have to shout. We got to go, Doug. I'm ready to leave.
Facts.
You can hear him and you out.
Yeah.
But that's what God is doing. He's asking us to allow him to get that close, to have access to that ear, to get close enough to speak to us so that all the noise of this world, COVID, 2020, political elections, race
injustice,
war, injustice, everything that's happening, vaccines, whatever, he's trying to get your attention the whole time.
Yeah.
What does he want? What is your next step? What is your best step? Because he always knows that.
Yep.
And I think that's the key.
Man, not to get so deep or whatever.
Yeah. What you doing? Where you going?
But I think
bringing out scuba gear.
Scuba gear. I think especially with the season that the times we're currently living in, right?
Yeah.
I think it's so important for people, but specifically Christians, those that say that they're followers of God, right? If you are a follower of Christ, I believe that God is trying to speak a word to his people. I really do. And because of all the noise that's out there right now, there's so much chaos and there's so much trying to compete for our attention. You know, God is speaking and there's so many people not hearing it. And it's not because he's not speaking. It's back to your analogy. If you just turn the music off, you'll hear him speaking. And I think as believers, I think it's a season that we need to get serious about our relationship with the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And not even just for us, because we're secure, right? Like we should be solid that if the Lord were to come right now, like, we're going, and, I think that's something to celebrate.
Yeah.
I think I'm always concerned when people speak about the return of the Lord with fear in their voice. That shouldn't be fearful for us. Like that, is that not what we're working towards? That, to be in eternity with Christ.
Mm-hmm.
What we should be fearful of is that there's still people that do not know who God is.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, what are we doing with that?
Yeah.
It's not like that we're supposed to be on the corner of the streets and blah. It's not that, but we're called to love God and we are called to love people. And I think as Christians, who are you loving? Who are you loving new? Right? You can't still be loving the same people, right? Like, who's the new people that you are loving that are new to this thing, right? Who are you bringing in and loving on and showing them the love of God and the grace of God and all these things? And as a church body, we're so divided right now, and that's a sad space to be. But my prayer is that we can get rid of the noise, right? Silence the chaos. And what is it that God is speaking to his people?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe if you sit down and you talk to other believers, you will start to see that he's saying the same thing to those that are listening. And scripture says, he that has an ear, let him hear. And I believe that he's releasing a word for his people. My prayer is that we will silence the noise and listen.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
That's good stuff.
I love you.
Love you too. What is something I could do better for you?
What can you do better for me? Let's go on a date.
Let's go on a date?
Yeah.
Another date?
Take me on a date. What do you mean another date?
What do you mean? You said a date.
Nope.
So another date.
I said cook me some food last time. I said I would like to be taken out on a date. You still owe me some other dates, but
Does the date include eating?
It can.
Okay. I got you, girl. Take you on
or
a date.
canoeing.
Or canoeing.
Not canoeing, kayaking.
Kayaking. I don't know what the difference is, but
oh my gosh.
Kayaking,
if you don't know me, I like to kayak. Something that not many people love.
I found out she likes the horseback ride as well. She does horseback.
I don't know how he does not know this after this. See, we're still
I know
learning.
She likes
we're
farms,
still learning.
I
Don't be telling people all my secrets, because then they're gonna think they know me. Those are my private desires.
To have a farm, yeah.
Unless someone wants to bless me with a ranch with horses, I'm
There you
available
go.
for the blessing.
You can take care of them horses.
Yeah, I'm gonna take care of them horses. Anyways, yes, we can go out on a date. Horseback riding.
There we go.
Boom.
Can't do that at nighttime. It's too hot for that horseback riding in this season of life. Like, we need maybe like in the wintertime, fall, and it's cool outside. How you gonna ride on a horse in shorts? Like, that don't make no sense to me. You need like some pants on, you know what I'm saying? So we will do it. Just
in 2023.
Just not in the summertime.
Okay. What can I do for you, sir?
What can you do?
What can I do for you this week, my love?
This week. You know what? What can you do for me? I would like you to cook me some Spanish food.
Oh.
There we go. The red beans. Actually, don't matter. You could do either the rice with beans in it already.
I can definitely. Can I do like a healthy version, or you want the ignorant one?
You can do a healthy version,
okay,
as long as it tastes ignorant.
I got you. I'll definitely do that.
All right, baby.
Mm-hmm. Love you.
Love you too.
All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out.
Yep.
Our small world.
Me.
Tell 'em we okay.